Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome back to another card tutorial. Today I'm going to be creating this super cute Valentine's Day card, and as always I will have the supplies I'm using today listed down below in the video description and over on my blog. I would love it if you subscribed, liked this video, and shared it with your friends. I am going to start off by creating my background, and to do this I am using the Layered Heart Lattice Stencil. So I have a piece of white cardstock trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 that I rolled up a piece of Post-it tape and placed on the back, and that's just going to secure my cardstock down to my work surface. Next, I'm going to take the lattice portion of the stencil and I'm going to line this up over the front of my cardstock, just making sure that those shapes are straight along the front of the cardstock, and then I'm going to hold that down with some washi tape. I'm going to secure it on each side, and that's going to hold it in place for me. Now I'm going to start my ink blending. So this first layer, I'm going to be using the Distress inks, and I'm using the Saltwater Taffy with a blending brush. Now because these are some really kind of small areas of a stencil, I want to make sure that I'm blending both left to right and right to left direction, because that way it's going to fill in that entire open area of the stencil. Then I can remove the washi tape and the first layer. And next I'm going to bring in the second layer, which is the hearts. So again, I'm just kind of eyeballing this, lining those hearts up in the center of my lattice piece and holding that in place again with the tape. The next color I'm going to use is Candied Apple from the Distress inks. So this is a really nice, bright, vibrant red. Now my ink pad is actually a little bit too juicy, which you do need to kind of be mindful for, because if your ink is too juicy, you can risk seeping that ink underneath your stencil. So I will pick up the ink with my blending brush, tap off on the work surface, and then come in and blend that onto the front of the stencil. So now I have this beautiful lattice background. To clean my stencil, I am bringing out my dirty dish rag, and I'm going to place the stencil on the top and spray this with some rubbing alcohol. This is going to clean off my stencil really well. I always clean up my stencils right after I use them so I don't risk putting something on top of them. Now with Distress inks, they are water reactive, so you could just wipe it down with water, but I like the rubbing alcohol because it dries really quick. Then I'm going to work on some stamping. So I am using the images from the Valentine Cupcake stamp set and the Sweet Chocolates stamp set. I picked out the cupcakes that didn't have the images on them. I'm going to save them for a different card. I lined them all up on Empress It Cardstock, which is a really nice smooth blending cardstock for using with alcohol markers. And I'm going to ink up the images with a alcohol-friendly ink. So any type of black ink that is friendly with alcohol markers will work great for this. And I am going to stamp it twice to make sure that I have really good coverage of all of those lines. Once I have these stamped down, I'm going to clean them, put them back onto the carrier sheet, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment right away. So the sentiment is coming off of that Sweet Chocolates stamp set. First I have the word sweet that I'm going to stamp in that same black ink. I love this because there is a coordinating die for it, and I'm a huge fan of coordinating dies with sentiments. And then I'm also going to bring in a smaller sentiment that's going to pair perfectly with it. And now for these, you want to be careful when you stamp them down. You don't want to push too hard because you will risk distorting your word by just kind of squishing it. So I'm just stamping real gently and using that same black ink. For the coloring of my images, I am going to be using my Olo markers for this, and I'm going to try and have the caps on screen for you. I really keep kind of a small bunch, and then I just kind of mix between them. Like I will have a variety of reds, but I don't use them all on one cupcake. I kind of have some where it's a lighter pink, some maybe where it's a brighter red. So for the base, or the, I guess, muffin part of my cupcake, I had used YO 2.7, 2.5, and I think 2.3. For some of the brighter shades of red, like the hearts and the strawberry, I used R 0.6, R 0.5, and R 0.4. So I went through and kind of picked out areas of the cupcakes, all 4 of them, that I wanted to have these really nice bright reds. And a lot of that is going to be, of course, the strawberry, the hearts on the top of the cupcake. And then I decided to also make this a red bird. So for the main portion of the body, I used those same 3 colors. But for the front of the face, I'm actually going to make that kind of a lighter shade of red or almost a pink. And that one is going to be R0.3. Now I'm going to color the top of the strawberry, the greenery. And for that one, I just used a G1.4. I did not do any shading for the top of the strawberry. For the frosting of the cupcakes, I'm going to be doing R0.4 and R0.3. Now this one I struggled with a little bit because it wasn't quite blending or looking like what I had originally done on a different card. So a lot of times what I'll do is do tip to tip. So I'm going to take my lighter marker, pick up some ink from the darker marker, and apply that. And so sometimes that will help with your blending process. I'm also going to use that kind of same shade of reddish pink for the cupcake down here. Now this one I did bring in a little bit lighter of a color. I believe I may have done R0.5, 0.4, and 0.3. I have them written down and I'm also trying to watch, but I really just grabbed a range of red and then just kind of rotated between if I wanted it on the darker end, like the 0.6, or on the lighter end, which is the R0.3. And really just by having that variety of that shades of red, I was able to kind of change up the look of my cupcakes. So you're going to see that the cupcakes turn out with reds, pinks, and then I have some light teals and dark teals. And for these, I don't always do a ton of shading to the cupcakes because sometimes there's just not enough room where I don't want to try and fit 3 different color combinations in a small area. So sometimes I will just do a light and a dark. For instance, I'm going to color, some of these wrappers are going to be in this teal, and this is going to be using my BGs. So I have 2 BG 2.4, BG 2.3, and a BG 2.1. So that's what I used for this particular cupcake. I'm also going to kind of color in here with a BG 2.3, and then I'm going to fill it in with that lighter marker, which is a BG 2.1. So here I did not do 3 different color combinations for it because I really had to go around all of those hearts, and I thought it was just easier to do the 2 markers. On my white frosting, I just outlined with the BG 2.1. I also applied that to some of my sprinkles. And then for this particular one with the polka dots, I went over the base of it with the lightest color, the BG 2.1. And then I'm adding the darker shades to the polka dots. And I absolutely love how all of these came out. So I'm using the coordinating die to die cut out all of the cupcakes and also that sweet sentiment, just holding them in place with a low tack tape, and then I'll run those through my die cut machine. In most cases, what I will do when I'm using Express It Cardstock is I will use the coordinating die and die cut out another just plain white piece, and then I can layer that together with the liquid glue. Express It Cardstock is not super thick, so I like to add that little bit of stability behind each of the images. I'm going to take a light piece of cardstock, something that matched my cupcakes really well, and I'm going to die cut out the Eyelet Rectangles frame from that piece of cardstock. I will need to take my craft pick and just poke out any of the remaining cardstock pieces that are in those holes, and I also use the craft pick to pop those out of my die so it's ready for use the next time. I want to put my stenciled panel inside of that frame, so I used my TSquare Ruler to measure that out. I will list that at the top of the screen. And then I'm using my Fiskars paper trimmer to trim down my stenciled panel. I find this paper trimmer very helpful because I can really see the exact measurements versus my guillotine cutter. So after I have those panels die cut and trimmed down, I can come in and kind of lay everything out to see how it's going to look and where I want to place each of the cupcakes. I also want to make sure that I'm saving room for that sentiment that's going to go in the center. So after I have everything planned out, I can start pretty much putting my card base together. I did create a side folding card base out of some heavy cardstock, and I'm taking my eyelet rectangle panel and I'm going to line the back of it with some thin foam tape strips. That's going to help pop it up from the front of my card. I'll attach that all the way down. I want to make sure I have really good coverage on the back of that cardstock. And then I'm going to remove the backing of the foam tape and add this to the front of my card base, really making sure that my margins are even all the way around the edge. I'm also going to take my stenciled panel, add foam tape to that, and add that right in between those stitched lines. Now, at any point, of course, you don't have to use the foam tape on any of those layers. I just absolutely love what the foam does for dimension. And I also added some thin foam strips behind my cupcakes. Now, that part I really do try and do because I think it helps kind of separate the cupcakes from the background. They don't blend together too much this way. But if you wanted to eliminate some bulk, I would suggest probably any of the panels, whether it's the eyelet rectangles or even your stencil panel, and then just leave the foam, the thin foam squares to the cupcakes. So I placed those in that grid format on the front of my card. I also lined the back of that sweet sentiment with the thin foam squares, placed that in the center. And then I have my small sentiment that I trimmed down to a thin strip, and I'm going to add that over the top. So my thin sentiment is going to overlap one of my cupcakes and also hang off the edge just a little bit. So to do this, it's easier for me to just use liquid glue, or you could use a tape runner. So this card is super adorable as is, but I wanted to step it up. To do that, I'm using some unicorn stickles. I'm adding that to just the small little hearts and even the little sprinkles. And then I'm going to step it up just a little bit more with a white gel pen, adding some highlights to a couple of the hearts, the bigger hearts, and then my strawberry. So that will finish off my card project today. And I absolutely love this. That quilted background, these adorable cupcakes. This may be my favorite card so far this year for Valentine's Day. I will have a link down below in the video description to my blog where I have more pictures posted, and there is also a supply list listed down there as well. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you again soon.